Is an architect and artist based in Sydney. He has had numerous exhibitions around the world in Australia, Hong Kong and London, and has received much acclaim for his creative work. Much of his work focuses on the human relationship to, or attitude towards, the built and natural world. Paul even painting directly from his kayak out on Sydney Harbour from time to time. He currently works with Art Atrium Gallery in Sydney and has made impressive contributions to the Australian cultural sector, both in his own work, but also in his roles as trustee of the Australian National Museum and the Lizard Island Reef Research Station. He's passionate about the impact of art and creativity on people, and I had the privilege of speaking to him about his professional experience. First, I asked him to walk me through his creative process.
With architecture, it's quite a structured process. First part of the process would be what we call sketch design. So that's the concept stage. And I explain to clients that it's inevitably a stage when I design a house for me. So, you can't help it. You get this lovely site and they say, oh, look, we want 3 bedrooms and whatnot. I think, right, I'll hear what I need and I'll just go and design my dream house. It's a highly iterative process. So you might have an idea. It's a brilliant idea as far as you're concerned, but your client has different ideas. And it's important that there's a nexus. And that happens in the design development stage, the next stage. During that stage, you also take into considerations 2 other evils, cost and counsel. So design development stage after the sketch design stage is when it becomes more iterative and probably less interesting. And where you might actually throw out the original design and start again. And then comes the contract documentation stage, where all the construction details happen. And where you design the kitchens, the bathrooms, but the window systems, the facades, all these things start being documented in detail. And then the final stage is building it. If you see architecture as basically generating a sketch design and then seeing that the way through, then it is terribly depressing because, you'll just meet obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And, 2/3 the way through the process, you will be promoting an idea that doesn't work, inevitably. Whereas if you are agile in the process with other people's involvement, it's a highly collaborative, interesting process.
Much of his process, while specific to architecture, is useful when embarking on any creative endeavour. Start with a concept that excites you, then think specifically about logistics, meeting the financial, conceptual, and practical restraints of a project. Then, document and detail your project specifics and move on to construction. I think the most valuable thing Paul emphasises is the importance of agility, flexibility, and iteration on any creative project. Be prepared to start and restart, and kill your darlings. While it can be frustrating, it's also an exciting and vital part of creative success. When asking Paul about his experiences of collaboration, I'd been expecting him to laud the creative, inspiratory powers of collaboration. However, he had a very practical and humorous view towards it.
There's a lot of layering of different considerations, whether they're council considerations, client considerations, general, streetscape, whatever they are. So it's while somebody might be able to get their head around everything eventually, at the very initial stages of a project, it's not really possible. So it's really good to have a collaboration because people will see things that that others don't. You do a beautiful little house and you're really happy with it, and then somebody says, "Yeah, but north's that way." The sun's, you've got the courtyard that way. Oh, shoot.
Not only did Paul say that it's important to collaborate to catch your mistakes, he simply acknowledged that creative success requires all kinds of expertise, not just design creativity.
The builders I know are wonderful people, and they bring a set of skills that I certainly don't have. Financial people, as dull as they may be, nonetheless bring a set of skills and rigor to the process that maybe the more creative architects and enthused builders don't.
Paul and I discussed one of his most memorable collaborative experiences. He assisted an Indigenous community in designing a staff residence in Mudawinji National Park that both catered to the needs of its community and complemented the natural environment.
It was a very different project, and with people who had never come across an architect or a building, and I just overlaid this process that I've just described to you, and we ended up with a building. And it was a very different building, and we're doing a house at Point Piper at the same time, so very wealthy clients. And really, the client interaction was pretty similar. Point Piper people figured they needed a huge kitchen. The clients at Nudawinji needed a place where they could butcher a kangaroo.
We also discussed the challenges that can arise when collaborating, particularly with people that have a similar skill set to you.
So at the Australian Museum, I was on the board of trustees. The museum had a very small public area, had the largest collection in Australia, and we needed a lot more public space. And during that process, we engaged architects. A collective noun for architects is a jealousy of architects, but if that jealousy is not there, then it can be highly collaborative, and it was, and it worked very well. I worked for a wonderful architect who was a professor at Harvard, and you could never have an idea. He'd just say, no matter what you did, it was just rubbish. But if it was a good idea, the next day he'd come back and present it as his idea. The ego is something that is, on one hand, you have to have confidence, you've got to find your voice. But on the other hand, you've got to be able to step back a little bit. And that's hard for creators sometimes, because that confidence is hard won. You've got to put one's ego to one side.
Paul has such an impressive CV and a mindful, socially conscious approach to his creative endeavours. So I really wanted his key to success over the years. I asked him for his advice on how to collaborate effectively, and his response was pretty straightforward, really.
It used to be that you could have beer, but you can't have that in an office anymore.
In all seriousness, he said the most vital thing in both collaboration and effective creative projects is having a grand vision and getting people on board with it, as well as using people's differing skills effectively.
The trick is to get the best out of people. If you take people on a journey towards a big idea, often they're more happy to let their egos drift to one side and collaborate in the grand vision. Whether it's a house or a museum, you take people on that journey towards a useful and broadly respected vision.
I specifically wanted to talk to Paul about his most recent exhibition titled Protest Paintings. The collection features landscapes from all across Australia. Multiple paintings in this collection were nominated for the Paddington Art Prize, an art prize for works inspired by the natural Australian landscape.
Protest is made of two Latin words, and effectively what it is a public advocacy or testament to something. So it needn't be a negative thing. It's actually saying, look, this is a really good thing.
The collection explores the human relationship to the natural world, and Paul intends to advocate for a more thoughtful and engaged approach to this relationship through his works. While Paul's collection features work that is recognisable as Australian landscapes, he has an almost cartoonish and abstract style of representing them. This conveys his message of not simply representing the world as it is, but how he sees that it can be. His work emphasises the beauty of our own natural environment, and in that celebration of its value, protests its degradation. Paul's collection also showed me the importance of seeing what is already valuable in our world when trying to think about how to change it and how to influence this change.
We talk about influencers, people who on Instagram and, are great influencers. Well, I see landscape painting as being a perennial influencer. It's an advocate for nature. And if you're to protest about anything, it should be about the natural world right now. So whilst they look like, and hopefully they are pretty paintings, nonetheless, they're a testament, a public one, to the landscape in our own backyard.
I also really wanted to talk to Paul about the value of joining the creative industries and how creativity will be valuable into the future. The creative industries are always looked down upon, and in a world that's seeming ever more bleak, it's hard to see the value in making things pretty or telling stories. However, Paul made a pretty convincing argument to the contrary.
Oh, you creatives are just, for artists, architects, in the real world, they'll say, in the real world, what happens is this. I'll say, hang on a minute, we're the real world. We're the ones that create things you can see, objects you can see, dancers, music. You're the artificial one. You're the abstract. You make all those sums and numbers that somehow mean something, but they're completely abstract. what makes us different from primates is storytelling. The creatives are probably the most necessary in terms of making us human than anybody.
Along this thread, Paul's vision for our future centres around the role of creatives and embracing the power of stories and art over money and exploitation. His is a vision I can't help but agree with.
It's the stuff that has gone beyond basic storytelling that has created the greed. And with that greed has meant we're destroying the planet and we're taking from others and we're creating wars. My vision would be to get back to an understanding that those are the most important things. Those are the things that we have drifted away from and what make us humans. I think if we just got back to enjoying that basic storytelling process, we'd find ourselves a lot happier.